Hello, welcome to the next devlog of MIN-0. We're on part 5 now, I think, and I'm still prototyping this in Godot. In this episode, we're going to cover 3 things, I think. Having a basic UI, being able to take player damage from hitting the landscape and things, and also bringing in some enemies and seeing how that works. So let's crack on. So the fairly productive first afternoon, I made this new UI scene and then stuck some labels in. This is the energy, and that's just something called a texture progress bar node, where it just generally converts a number into this little bar, which is handy. So I thought 100 equals top, 0 equals nothing. And then over here I had this secondary weapon thing that I decided, I'd keep track of the missiles. This wouldn't be just for missiles, it'd be whatever your secondary weapon was at the time, which was selected. You're probably noticing there's this room name goes here, which is just outside the screen. And that's because I figured every time we go into a new room, we should show what the room is. So I made this animation player that would just pop this up and then pop it back down again when we finished. There's a few new things going on in terms of the scripting for this. So some stuff's pretty obvious. We're doing like reveal room names and stuff like that. But we're hooking into globals to get this thing called stat change. What this is, if we look in globals, is every time we change the value of the global variables, missiles or player energy, we have the option to do this get or set thing. So if you say what is the value of it, it literally just returns the value. But if you say let's set the missiles to some new thing, aside from the fact it sets the value, it also does this stat change emit. And that's what we did in the UI. We hooked into that signal, and every time something changes, we update the status, and that updates our UI. So that's the first bit. The second bit I did was try and implement damage. And I did this by making a basic shader. And all we do is we turn any pixels that aren't the background colour a different colour. And we've got a shader parameter called progress, which we can set, and basically just turns my sprite all white. And what I do in the script is if we hit something, I say let's go ahead and change our progress value to 1, which goes white, and then it starts a timer. The timer lasts for 0.5 seconds, and then it changes it back again. And whilst it's in that colour, what I'm saying is lost control equals true. So the idea is, oh, you've hit something, therefore you're in damage and your controls don't work anymore. If we go ahead and play this, so we've got the normal way of doing things. If I bump in, boom, I lose control for a while. This doesn't quite work though. So if I land, I also lose a whole bunch of energy there, which is not ideal. But it works in terms of if I go ahead and pick up some missiles like this, that one and that one, you'll see my secondary weapons gone up. And if I go over through here, we'll see this is called left room. There's a problem in this. These are named after the scene names, and the scene names can't have spaces in them. See my energy just go up there. So what I need to do is think about the actual name of what the scenes would be, or what the rooms would be rather than the scenes, and name them that instead. Okay, so the problem with this is what happens, well, A, if we do that, it shouldn't hurt us. B, what happens if we land like this? Because it's like, oh, you've lost it completely. I mean, then I think, should I be able to do that? And I'm getting hurt doing it, and I'm almost out of energy there as it is. I think it's right if we slam into something like this, that should hurt. But perhaps it's like the bottom parts reinforced or something, so we can land on things and not have to deal with energy being taken off. So that's something I think to look at next. That was all in one afternoon, and then I haven't done anything for about 3 weeks. The reason being, on my other project, which is an FPV simulator, there's an option to use a Wi-Fi joystick on a radio, and this is significant if you're using an iPhone or iPad, because Apple does not let you join anything other than joysticks it wants to you, which basically is an Xbox controller or a PS4 controller. And for people flying RC models, you need a proper radio, and this let me
get around the restrictions from the MFI certification thing. So I thought this would take about a week to get right, and I had it running on a week on the desktop. But as soon as I got it into Unity, I found out I was having blocking calls on the socket stuff, and then once I actually ran it on an iPhone, I had more problems. So it took about 3 weeks to do everything, get it working, and get it released again. But now we're back to MIN-0. First pass of this was to create some area 2Ds. So I did this one on both the legs. We've got the collision polygon down there, as you see, just sticking out. And the idea being, I thought, if I say, if you've collided, but the area 2Ds on the legs are also colliding, then don't take damage. And what I did is I used the signals body entered, body exited to keep track of that. Also, I thought, we've got this little sort of debug thing here saying if it's entered or exited. But if I play that, you can see currently it says that our left leg and right leg are entered. If we thrust, it takes off again. If we go down, it takes damage. Why does it take damage? Seems to be an ordering thing. It's like we get the collision first, but at that time, the signal for the right leg, left leg, body for the area 2D has not occurred. Therefore, we still take damage. It's like it's working a frame behind or something. So that's not going to work. So my alternative idea here is to use raycast. You see, we've got these two arrows here and here, and they're just extending just a pixel beyond the end of the legs here. The idea being then, again, if I collide, I can check the raycast to see if I think one of the legs is touching or not, which just looks like that. This seems better. We can bounce on either of the legs, and if we bash into it properly, we still take damage. I changed the amount of time you're out of control to 0.25 seconds, which seems a lot fairer. The other side effect of this one is if we lay the ship down, because that leg's touching, nothing happens in terms of damage, which means we can also get our ship back up again. Which, it's not perfect, but it's, you know, it's better than nothing. And we can use the legs kind of as a shield here for bouncing into stuff. Of course, we always have the option to take specific damage if I want to, based on what we're actually hitting and stuff. And I can do that as I like. But for now, this is better than it was, and we've got something to work towards. We've both got the fix for, you know, what happens if I'm lying on my side. We've got rid of the problem with landing, and we still take damage and lose a bit of control if we hit everything else the other way. One thing I haven't checked here is this is not a body here, this is an area 2D I'm hitting, so I just need to do some changes there so we don't take damage there. So then I drew this amazing monster. Again, it's not necessarily going to look like that in the game. It's just a placeholder. I thought about animating it, and I thought, that's another thing. I'll do that later. I kind of came up with kind of animation. He sort of opens his mouth from there, and the reason there is he spits out a bullet. That's the idea. So I went ahead and stuck the little blob monster in the game, and I made this big area 2D, which is basically going to be his attack zone. Then I put a few of them within my level, and the idea being that when you get in the attack zone, he opens his mouth, fires, and then closes again, which is done on timers. So if we play that and we get into the attacking blobs, they start firing stuff at us. I'm just basically using the position of the ship as it was at the time to do the firing, and there's just a couple of delays in between if he can fire and him closing his mouth. And if they hit me, I turn white and lose a bit of energy. What I haven't done yet is done anything towards killing them, so they can get caught up in the thermonuclear explosion and nothing happens. And down here we've got like two at once. The idea being these aren't particularly tough enemies, and of course they're just prototyping, they're not going to actually look like this. But if we had like a bunch of these all in the same place, we'd get a little bit of a bullet hell going on, depending how fast I wanted to fire the bullets. So now we need to have them blowing up. Okay, so as far as hitting stuff goes, I basically just put an extra line in my basic weapon script that says if the collider hit begins with enemy, then we call the hit function on the enemy. The great thing about this raycast is the collider we get back is basically a reference to the body that we can then call something on. So in the enemy blob script, we have got a hit function which does some stuff. Now I seem to be addicted to the use of the animation player, so just to give things a bit more life, I came up with an idle animation where all I do is move the offset just up and down very slightly. It has to be offset instead of position, as position takes the position based on the parent of the object, which I found out, and that made it completely disappear. I've also made a die animation which I'm not particularly happy with. It just sort of spins around and does that, which is, yeah, it's okay. While I was there, I also got the enemy bullet just to flash slightly like that, just to, you know, give it some life. So if we go ahead and play that, if we now go ahead and find our enemies, you see just a little bit of jigging up and down gives them something, and we can see that, you know, the bullets flash a bit. And if I shoot, yeah, I'm not overly impressed with that. I was going to do the animation for it, and I thought, you know, that's something for later. I don't want to do animation with something I'm going to redraw anyway, and I still need to do things like get rid of these ridiculous massive explosions. But, you know, we can shoot them now, and they'll go away. Oh, that one's upside down for some reason, I think. I think that's the one I was messing with, and I left him in a weird position. And of course, if we go out the room, then go back in the room, we can see that our enemies have respawned. And again, I'm going to give something so certain enemies will respawn, certain enemies won't respawn. So that is looking, you know, rough around the edges. Hang on, let me go and fix this guy. Okay, that's better. Beware of what happens when you're playing in the editor. Yeah, so, you know, we can shoot and things blow up. Obviously, this is not final things, and you're probably wondering, well, when are you going to do the final thing? And this sounds like a good time to bring up the Trello chart. Okay, so here's our friend the Trello chart, and, you know, we've got the basic bits in that we've done today, and we can put them in the done section. And you're probably thinking, well, hey, you've barely done it. You've got an enemy that kind of blows up and fires at you, and your UI element's not finished yet. The point is, these are just the building blocks of where I want to get to. I don't need to finish anything off right now. I just need to check that the basic stuff works. And the reason for that is this extra column I've done here. We're going to make a playable demo. And what I want to make this is basically the first 10 or 15 minutes of gameplay. So the big thing there is redraw all the graphics so they aren't horrific, and that's going to hold everything up. And we want to basically have like a title screen, an open-in cinematic, and have a decent size area to explore, and, you know, go through at least the sort of first mission and boss fight to like unlock the next bit. And that's, you know, when it ends and like, oh, you could get the full game here. And I have said things like show snippets of areas to come, teaser trailers of the best bits that don't exist yet. Yeah, that's an interesting thing. It's like basically you're going to show what's going to come before you realise what's going to come. But the whole point of doing very basic things is I can check if all these sort of basic things work. Yeah, okay, we've got enemies, they're very basic, I take damage, I don't blow up yet, I've got a UI. It's not fully hooked into everything yet, but the point is that is a good building block to go with. And sort of what I want to do is get on with the next things, which is going to be carrying, delivering cargo, and a map. Probably this bit first, actually, because I think it's a hard bit to do. But yeah, that's my thought process. So that's going to be next thing, the carrying, delivering cargo, and what to actually do with it, and how we can get the mechanics of that working. So yeah, join me next time. We'll see what happens.